Welcome to Essays and IPAs, presented by CDI Studios.
So thank you once again, everybody, for joining us to Essays and IPAs. I am Michael Colonno, the AVP of Data Center Solutions team. Today, I don't have one of my normal hosts. I am joined by Bob, who you've seen before in a previous episode, as my guest host. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, Bob McCouch, Director of Network Architects here at CDI.
And today, our actual guest is...
I'm Ed Smoke. I'm the AVP of the Digital Solution Architecture team.
Okay, digital.
Mm-hmm. Digital.
It's very vague.
It's much better than analog.
It's very broad.
It is a very broad term. Well, so we'll get into that because it's one of those things that to me is actually one of my pet peeves about the digital term. But so I ask everybody, right? Mm-hmm. What is the booze that, first of all, you don't drink anymore? Mm-hmm. And whenever I ask that question, there's always a story. It's not just, I don't drink it because I don't like it. It's something happened or you end up in jail. So
nothing as interesting as jail time.
Okay.
But
you can talk about them here. It's fine.
It would be, out of anything, I'd say it would be Red Label. Would be the one that...
Red Label?
Yeah, that would be back in college.
I was going to say that's a college label.
That is a
college tier.
Down the shore. And
I was going to say, we pay you enough, right here? And I mean, like Kyle's not on here, but we could probably talk to him.
There's always opportunity. But, it was actually, having it, no problem. Then, nice big red Solo cup. About that much left in the bottom. I stepped away at one point, come back, it's full. Oh, we filled it with soda for you. No, it wasn't soda. And the rest is in the books, Okay. So it was a bit of a rough day.
I like that. But you didn't like that.
No. Stay away from it a bit now.
So next question is, so solutions architects, solutions engineers, I think there's always a story. There's always that line in the sand that you draw of why you switched into an architecture role as opposed to a post-sales or sales role. Mm-hmm. So what kind of got you into our space?
So it's kind of an interesting journey because, really I started on the customer side of things. Yeah. So was in the, with large retailer for about 17 years, always in the, let's say the data center space and user support space. Then went with the professional sports league for a bit. Okay. And always said that, there's something that was, let's say, kind of missing from my career, and tried just doing straight up sales at one point.
Did you? I didn't know that.
It was not my thing.
Yeah.
Dark. I mean, I
can't even imagine
the dark side of it.
Yes.
I'm trying to picture it. So what was it that you did sales for?
It was actually back in the day when you sold, it was telephone nut lines and that type of stuff. It was
no way.
Oh, yeah, it was a
you sold prepaid calling cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like basically maximize your minutes and all that type of stuff.
Okay. Would you like international calling?
Yeah, I think MCI was still in the picture back then, but it wasn't. That was a small lack out.
We have a great price per text.
Yeah, exactly. But it was, it just wasn't my thing. Let's just say back then. So I got back into it was while I was kind of developing my career. So I got back into the. Into the support side of the business.
Okay.
And then it's kind of kept developing there, and then ended up in a leadership role, but again, more on the customer side of things. I always said I would love to get back into, still the engineering side, but I wasn't a salesperson. And I remember talking to my wife about it at one point, and I was like, I kind of described exactly what I'm doing now to her about a year before I joined CDI. And opportunity was presented to me about this. And I said, this sounds like exactly what I'm looking for. And, stepped into the role, had a chance to interview with Rob, with Vince and the team and stuff like that. And I was like, I need to be here. It's essentially what it was. And it was just, it's been a great ride ever since. I always say the only thing I regret is I wasn't here 10 years sooner. Yeah. It was just, it's a great group of people and this opportunity to continue to keep growing and growing.
Yeah, it's funny. Every company has its ups and downs. You have those days that you're like, I will burn this place to the ground. And then
call those Tuesdays.
Yeah, exactly. I usually go to about Wednesday.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like at the same time, like you sit there and you're like, I love the people I work with, and that's so rare. And I mean, like I joke around. I joked around about this podcast recently, and I know there's been different comments about like the not dichotomy, but the kind of interaction that we have between ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And like I almost laugh that this is probably more of a recruiting tool than it is an educational tool, probably, because they're like, I could probably like hang out with those guys, but at the same time, I appreciate that, and I'm glad. I said this about Chris when he was on the last episode, and I can say this about you as well. Is like I'm glad you're on because you were one of those people that was kind of like a rising star in terms of like the leadership team and in terms of efficacy, in terms of the digital team of at the time when you joined. Digital, like just to kind of level set for the audience, digital meant ServiceNow. Well,
that's it. It was literally me and 2 salespeople, and we were just going around, and just kind of doing our thing, just trying to keep building it up. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, so to be clear for everybody in the audience, it was one of those things where we just started in ServiceNow, and this is kind of one of those things where I'm actually very happy about. Is CDI made an investment. We hired about 18 people for the ServiceNow team.
That's about right for the delivery practice and all. Yeah.
I literally took that as a marker, and I immediately bought 100 shares of like ServiceNow. No, I'm serious. This is completely serious. So I was like, if CDI is willing to invest this many salaries into a service that we don't even have yet.
You figured you'd invest your own salary into it.
I was like, I have to buy into this. Trust me, I'm very happy I did because the stock skyrocketed.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just our business. Now CDI is a ServiceNow Elite partner. During acquisition, kind of playing Pac-Man of different partners, we bought another Elite partner, so we're kind of like that super elite, right? But now, like, what does digital actually mean? Because now. I said it's a vague term, and we made the joke that it used to be ServiceNow, but what the heck is it now?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really morphed and grown, right? So to your point, it was a small group of people at the beginning, and we've continued to grow out the practice. So if you look at where we started to add additional products into that. So if you look at the actual, let's say, the buckets within digital at this point. It's really you have the ServiceNow practice. We have the Salesforce practice now, which is continuing to grow. Same thing, a whole delivery practice behind that, and then we also have our DevOps practice, which is also part of the digital portfolio. We also have different monitoring tools that are also part of that. Okay. So it's a whole tool set that is behind what we call digital, but it's also kind of its interaction with other products. So you look at what we do in the data center side, right? So it's not just, we sell a product and we're in a silo. It's how do we interface with other products within the CDI portfolio.
I think it's really about building business intelligence.
It is. It's about business intelligence. It's also about business automation.
Right.
So you look at things like, we had, when I first started, really developed the whole HCAF methodology with kind of ServiceNow at its core with a lot of other ancillary products around that. Yeah. So, that's continued to build and grow. We do have a lot of products, and we have a lot of leadership around digital. I look at the SA team. When I started, the SA team was the size of digital today.
Yes.
Right. So we have 12 people on the team today with digital. That was maybe a shade larger with 15, but still, it was we've seen a lot of growth.
It's funny. I went to Cisco's conference in I don't know, it's probably 2014 or 15, right? It was still in the John Chamber days, and he during his keynote was talking about the digitalization of businesses, right? And I was sitting there in the audience thinking, like, what's he talking about? Like, of course everything's digital. Like, we're here at a networking conference. Like, we have packets that are digital. But it really was kind of a watershed, like an inflection point in terms of business there, where it became less about just having IT infrastructure to run those parts of the business, and instead building business intelligence and automation top to bottom throughout the business. And that's the part that I think you guys are tackling within your team, which is really interesting.
No, it is. That's what keeps it really interesting for us too, right? And it just keeps it fresh all the time. It's always changing, always evolving. And when you look at let's say the
which is all very frustrating.
Well, that's what keeps us in front of people.
Who moved your cheese, Mike?
But no, it does keep changing. So and that's what keeps things. Keeps things moving forward with all of us. So
and you have, sorry to steal the presenter spotlight here, but I think what's really interesting about your role in digital is that you really are melding the business the business problems, right,
Yes.
with technology.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. As
it's
I think a lot of
purely
people know, like
business
I'm an infrastructure guy. Or I do networking, right? Networking is about moving packets. Okay, I could say that solves business problems, but it's in kind of an abstract sense. You are taking real business problems customers have, right? How do we deal with inventory? How do we deal with managing our assets? How do we deal with automating our HR processes? And you're turning that into something that is repeatable and reliable and can be reported on and all those things. Right?
It's also why they steal all the tech writers and business process consultants and everything.
Exactly.
That's
right.
That's why we don't have access to those kind of people. It's because they always steal them.
We hide them. Yes.
exactly.
That's pretty much what it is.
But yeah, so a big practice within there, to Bob's point, is obviously automation, right?
Yeah.
Like just whether it's CI/CD type stuff, whether it's just straight automation. What do you find in terms of your engagement are? I'm trying to think the best way to ask this, but what are people really looking to remove the human element from these days? From like what you're interacting with people, like what's the most seen thing? They're just like, I want to automate this, or I want a workflow around this so that it is automated, at least the process.
And I'd say it's always that doing more with less, right?
Okay.
So I mean, today I'd still say one of the big things that we see is how do you automate, onboarding and offboarding is a huge thing, right? So I mean, we see a lot of, we always have.
There's so many checks and balances need to get done. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whether you're
Is that the HR module within ServiceNow, or is it just like everything else?
It can be.
Okay.
So it can be part of the HR module. It could be onboarding an individual and then, let's say augmenting or complementing like an ADP, a Workday, right? Something along those lines. But then you also have things like just being able to build out an onboarding request, right? So different things like that. So it's, taking things that were manual, that were paper processes, automating it. It can also be something where, tasks are assigned to individuals, or before it may have been, we've had even large companies, emails are sent to folks. I mean, the other thing really since...
This person needs a laptop.
Right.
Wait, email's not like a legitimate workflow?
Oh,
no, it's totally legit. It depends on who you ask. Ask email administrator, that is the way you want to handle it.
Yeah.
Auditor, maybe not so much.
Listen, when I was an admin, I had a physical paper checklist that I went through. An employee just started. They need a laptop. It needs an asset tag. They need an AD account.
And that was that one piece of paper that went from office to office to office to get that manual signature.
Sent around in the little envelope with the little figure 8 wrapper on it. Yeah.
It's amazing. And even again, larger organizations that are still doing that. So, I mean, that's still a large driver. Automated change. You mentioned CI/CD. I mean, that's a big area that we also see is how to automate my change management. So everything from it could be something through ServiceNow. It could be something within Salesforce, right? Something can come in through an external source. Let's just say, not only just an internal service desk, but maybe it's an external facing desk, that type of a thing to open up an incident.
Right.
And it can track everything all the way through. Where again, today a lot of it is manual, and then right through interfacing with your developers, interfacing with change.
I think that's a really exciting thing about what you do and what CDI does with its digital practice is, those of us on the infrastructure side, right? Like mostly what we want is to not be noticed, right? If nobody says what's going on with the network
it's a good day.
or what's going on with the servers, like that's a good day, right? Like
you want
we've
people
succeeded.
To be happy customers of what you do.
And completely oblivious to what you're doing.
Yeah, transparent.
But what you're doing, again, is you're taking actual business processes that people have to spend time on today, and you're turning that into something that is more repeatable, more reliable, easier, and faster, right? So you're adding a huge amount of business value with what you're able to do through CDI's digital portfolio. So I think that's really cool, right? I mean, that's why I look up to Ed, because I'm just trying to keep my name out of the news, right? I'm just trying to keep people.
I'm literally looking up to him.
But no, you're right. I mean, it's about outcomes, right? So we're not necessarily going in there and saying, okay, it's about this product. We're selling outcomes,
right?
And that's what makes us successful, because it's not just
we're outcomes within a line of business, right? Within a customer's business processes that are not just IT, which is huge, right?
Right, exactly. We do have a lot of interface with other parts of the business, and it's really being able to adapt to that, right? So I touched on earlier, like my original area, I came up through other organizations on the client side, and having that ability to speak to clients with if you want to call it a client hat on, right? It gives a different perspective of it. So it's like, you're also probably thinking about this, this, and this. A number of folks on my team are the same way.
Yeah.
So So you are let's call you a high-ranking official within the CDI hierarchy, right? So along those lines, being that you were ServiceNow focused and now digital is this broad term, what do you struggle with as a leader in terms of having so many different avenues and having different essays within your purview that have all these different focuses? Like how, I personally have, so just for everybody out there, I've literally adopted one of the tools that Ed's worked on to kind of grow talent. Like, how do you find that, like, is it challenging to grow these different people, or is it like, what's your best kind of advice to people in terms of like how, like when you have all these different areas, how do you grow these people into the next generation of leaders or next generation of specialists in their areas?
The biggest thing is, when we bring people into CDI, I mean, you guys, do the same thing, right? It's looking to see, okay, are they a fit, a cultural fit, right? Because whether it's folks that are here, they've been here for a while, you look at some of the acquisitions we've done, right? I always say our acquisitions have been brilliant because it's like not only this, from a business perspective, but cultural perspective, right?
Yeah. Oh,
so it's been, you talk to somebody we just acquired for 5 minutes, if you know them for 5 years. So I look at that same thing when we bring people in, right, to the organization. So as far as, let's say, growing that person, it's someone who has that drive, that wants to, be taking on new technologies. We talk about that during the interview process, is that, we look at it as being entrepreneurial. Are you going to think for yourself? We like to look across the aisle, so to speak, right? You talked about some of the stuff in the data center, the network side of the house, right? It's not about silos here. It's about being able to look across the aisle and build out, whether it's different events, whether it's different solutions, right? And that's one of the things, too, is that we look for folks that are creative, that are also, business and people oriented, to kind of fill these roles as we fill them, because we want them to continue build their career.
Yeah, but how do you hone that? Like that, so like it's great. Like so we're asking the right questions, let's say during the interview process. But now I have somebody that's a go-getter. But how do I actually like focus them into accomplishing things? Because to me, you have, like Bob mentioned, when we talked about making someone a senior, it's about consultative, which means like maybe you're not paralysis by analysis type people anymore, right? Where a lot of engineers are when they first start. But like now I'm an entrepreneurial person. I might have all these great ideas, but how do I teach them to focus and be goal oriented?
I mean, we do
That's
actually
challenging.
I think across the board it is, but it's continuing to have open conversations with them. You just mentioned goals, right? So I do something with the team where we just do a quarterly touch point on goals. It's just something that we do for ourselves. So we see, where do you want to grow? Where do you want to continue building? And then also, where do I see that they want to go? Where do my leaders see that they want to go?
Yeah.
So, and then also, is that in alignment with where we want to grow the business? So I'd say that one of the biggest things is a lot of open communication about where they want to grow their careers, or where they want to, not everybody, let's say, wants to go, let's say, all the way through, let's say, to management level. And that's great.
Right. Yeah, because people don't like to manage people.
Right. And that's fantastic, because we need people at all different levels being able to contribute and being able to be that rock star that they are. So it's just really, I would say in our role we have to have the biggest ears. You have to listen and be able to, whether it's on the solutioning side, whether it's on the people side, so that this way we can continue to just build, to develop, and retain.
I'm glad you said that. So it's funny, on one of the we had a comment on one of the previous episodes, and someone mentioned, like, what are your biggest tenets of kind of leadership? And they wrote some of the things that they thought, and they were all very fantastic. The first thing I wrote was, like, the best thing that you need to do is really just listen, right? It's like, it's the same thing with presentation skills. Like, to your customer, you have to listen. To your business, you have to listen. Like, you need to know what actually is there before you can move forward. It's the same thing with leadership, right? Is you need to hear, like, the needs and wants of them. You need to hear the needs and wants of the business, and kind of marry those two.
I would say the worst calls that I have with a customer is the ones where I'm talking the whole time. Right?
Oh, agree. And
because A, I know nothing, and B, that means I'm not listening, right? I'm not hearing what their challenges are, what they're looking for, right? I'm just pontificating from the mountaintop, which is,
I had so once again, a lot of people have been exposed to, we've mentioned our Making Sense of decks, where we compare different technologies and we try to agnostically go through and prescribe what people need, right? So I was doing the backup deck when one of our SAs, will probably be one of our next episodes, Matt Kaplan, when he first started, I went through, and the customer didn't make a single comment the entire time.
Oh my.
Now, once again, all of our
That's brutal.
I don't remember if it was episode 1 or 2 or whichever, we talked about storytelling and how, not just in our delivery, but our decks, it's about storytelling. And with that, we want things to be conversational. We want to tell a story so that people are involved or intrigued or interactive. And not a single person, I'd stop and be like, listen, I said a lot of things,
That's the word. Let me pause here.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Just nothing, just crickets.
Nobody even goes off mute. You can see it, and you're just like...
And they come off mute, and they're just like, no, you're doing good. I'm like, all right. So for I think it was 90 minutes.
Yeah.
We had a 90-minute meet. For 90 minutes, I just spoke. Now, listen, I understand that's kind of what we're doing here.
Right.
But we're interactive because it's the three of us interacting. This was just me talking to a screen out there, kind of thing. And I'm just like... Okay, all right, rock and roll, right?
What you want is the ability to listen and learn, right, and empathize with what a customer's experiencing.
And
that's it. That's how you truly. Then you're not going to get the right solution, whatever it might be for them. Because again, I'll flip it over on the other side. I couldn't stand when somebody listened to 30 seconds of what I had to say, then tuned out that was trying to deliver a solution. Didn't really listen start to finish. So
So along those lines, so we're talking about engagement. Right, engagement in sort of like this. We're talking in front of cameras, and a lot of
cameras here. I thought we were just having a casual conversation at the bar.
Just hanging out here.
Yeah. But along those lines, it's one of those things that we're used to being in front of a webcam of some kind, and have you ever? I don't want to say forced, but have you ever prescribed that you meet your team in person because you're looking for those nonverbal cues or that physical interaction as well?
When we can, the challenge, of course, is just being remote, right? So we have folks in Georgia, in Wisconsin, PS, so they're all over the place. So, but when we can meet, we try to as much as we can. So, we'll do regional lunches with folks, different things like that, or we can do different, outings or something like that. So we do it as much as we can. Yeah. But we have our weekly meetings. We try to keep listen, look on the camera if you can. So when you're in the car, okay, we get it. Right. But so you try to get cues and that type of thing when you're talking to people. So.
I think one of the challenges there is when you're getting on a video call or even just a voice call, right? You're doing so with a deliberate, there's an agenda or at least a time slot that you're filling, right? Sure. And what you don't have is that organic, just running into somebody at the coffee machine or the water cooler and hearing them about what they're doing, right? The whole work from home transition has been a very double-edged sword, right? Obviously, it's given a lot of us the ability to be more flexible in how and when we're doing our work and what we do. Right, a lot of freedom, right? Yeah. And to be attentive to customers and the business needs, but also get some of our personal things done. But you lose some of that organic, just natural conversation that happens with people because everything is I've set up time to talk with Ed, right? In fact, I was on a call with Ed this morning, right? And it was just okay, we had a thing that we were get on the phone to talk about, and we talked about it, and then it was okay, well, see you later. Yeah. So, I think it's a little bit of a challenge. That's why I think in person is good because it just flows a lot more freely.
It does, and it's tough to force those things. I mean, I know,
Well, you're not tired of virtual happy hours?
Listen, I've talked about.
I'm glad those are somewhat by the ways. I dropped more alcohol in my keyboard. I had towels by the side. It was just ugly, You're trying to do craft cocktails, or maybe they would do a smoker in the middle or something like that.
I know, because
everyone's trying to one up somebody else. They're doing an absinthe thing, and
went to an absinthe happy hour virtually. Was it Amsterdam hosted thing? Jeez. So Ed, speaking of absinthe, just because hobbies or other things that you like to do. It doesn't have to be hobbies. It could just be things that you like to fill your time with. That's not CDI.
I don't think this guy fills his time with anything except CDI and its customers.
Like I admit, Ryan always kids around. He always thought I was a robot from the start because he could call me, 6 in the morning, 8 at night, 10 at night. Hey, can we bang this out? I'm like, oh, yeah, it's no problem. Let's just get it done. Yeah. But when I'm not doing that, no, I mean, I enjoy playing golf. I enjoy spending time with my boys. My boys are 19 and 22, so it's doing things with them, doing things with the family. And then I enjoy doing a lot of projects around the house. I mean, took time off one year to replace the windows in my house, and of course I don't do anything like small. I have to decide to no, I got to make them all bigger at the same time.
Right,
so
of course. Now you're reframing and you're
exactly
siding
so
and the whole
And then you have neighbors walking by asking for my card and stuff like that. So. But so that's my whole side hustle. Exactly. I do that between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Yeah, shit's drafty in my house, so you've got me covered. Then that's good to know.
Ed's Digital Solutions and Windows.
And like you said, digital's very broad.
It is.
Digital windows.
Digital window. Oh, nice. So each one's like an IoT device. And
There you go.
They can open if the weather's really nice and stuff.
Man,
I like it.
There you go.
I like it.
You're going deep now.
I know. So we have to talk about this beer. Though Kyle Nolan is not on this episode, this is one of his favorite brewskis. This is from Kane, which is in New Jersey, so that's fantastic. So this is Sneak Box. And it is very tasty. And I asked Bob prior to the episode if he knew what a sneak box was. Bob, I have to ask you, do you know what a sneak box is?
That's it.
Bob, I know that's Bob, but
yeah, I know. Sorry.
So I can tell that it's definitely a higher concentrate in that one. But
no, it's actually much.
I feel like it was a thing around like Prohibition, wasn't it?
No, it was not.
Okay.
No,
I'm not aware of what a sneak box is.
So it's actually a hunting thing. So a sneak box is actually a small boat that has a covering that you use for bird hunting.
Wow, I never would have figured that one out.
No idea.
Yeah, so there's
ChatGPT maybe would have figured it out.
Yeah, ChatGPT probably could have answered that question.
Whole other episode right there. But,
Yeah.
So out of 0 out of 10, what would we rate this? 5.4. 5.4. So it's nice and light.
You're very granular with your ratings. It is nice and light. I like that.
No,
I commented before. It's got a nice malty finish, right? It's well balanced.
It's an American Pale Ale, not
American Pale Ale. So it's right. So it's not quite as strong. It's not made for crossing an ocean. It's just
Yeah.
No, it's crisp, malty finish, well balanced,
clean. It's light.
Yeah, I mean, give it about a 6.
Yeah, I mean, as far as IPAs go, I mean, let's say my go-to is Head High from Kane. So if it's like all else fails, that's where I'll usually jump over to.
No.
So
that is an IPA.
It is an IPA.
That is an IPA. So that is definitely stronger.
Exactly. So but no, this is nice.
Yeah, solid beer.
No complaints.
Give it a score.
Let me think about it for a few minutes here. I'm swirl it around. Oh wait, wrong show.
I'm gonna give it a 7.3.
You upped your score because you were weren't you a 5.6 a minute ago?
No, I'm saying that's the concentration level.
Oh,
I would say this is. I'd give it about a 7. I'd say a solid 7.
All right.
Okay, good.
I'll stick with my.
This is definitely very pleasant.
Yeah,
it is. It's good.
I heard Kyle gives it a 14 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Listen,
1 to 5 actually. 1 to 5.
1 to 5. He gives it a 14 for sure. I don't know if he's sponsored by Kane. That's why we couldn't allow him in this episode. He was trying to wear a T-shirt and a hat and other things because it's right by his house. So
and the stickers on the side of his car. Yeah,
exactly. It's a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
for sure. So I guess Ed, the one of the last kind of topics I want to cover is how many. Like I said this on another episode. Like how exactly do I buy a DevOp? Like can I buy them in units of DevOp?
We still have the crate load.
Okay, so you can buy a crate or a case. Can I buy a case of DevOps?
Yeah.
A bushel?
A bushel.
A bushel. Yeah. No, it gets very complex,
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you before, like as we kind of outro here, because you guys do DevOps and because it's a broad term and agile, we've kind of created at CDR our own kind of a hybrid model of even agile methodology. What's and you don't I'm sorry to put you on the spot with this one, but what's a silly question that you get around the things that you do within the digital world? And think about this, Bob, as well. like, because you have automation and different things as well as part of your world, right? Like, what's a silly question you get asked?
I don't know if it's as much silly as you touched on DevOps. If you talk about like a confusing question, right? So maybe just to turn it a little bit, is that when people will talk about DevOps, right? Because it is a very also like cloudy subject. I always say you ask 5 people what DevOps is, you're gonna get 10 answers what DevOps is.
It's a culture.
So it really is. So when you look is trying to define that. So we'll get a request that, somebody wants to talk about DevOps. Okay, well, what area of DevOps? Are you looking to talk about something around automation? You're looking to talk, is there a specific topics? We try to, kind of hone in on it. So I'd say it's probably trying to demystify that a little bit. And that's one of the things that, as an organization, as a digital team that we're actually working towards is helping to continue to demystify that internally and also externally.
Sure.
So that's one of the things. I mean, just talked to our core team about that last week down in DMV, and it's really starting to, then that's where we have to kind of start, right? Is, when it comes in the door, helping build those conversations.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of?
Oh, for me, it's like the customer wants to talk about network security, right?
Okay. It's just like, what does that mean?
It's
ACL?
Right. It's just so broad, right? I know you had Chris on a prior show, and it was Chris Whitten, and he was talking about how you have to think about like zero trust as it's a mindset, right? It's not a thing you buy. Yeah. Same thing with network security, right? It can mean anything from are we talking about a firewall? Are we talking about secure wireless access? Are we talking about remote access user VPNs and SASE? Like it's it's just all over the place, right?
It's to you.
What does that mean to you? So it's again not a silly question, but a question it's just so broad.
It's broad. That's what. It's not a one.
Yeah, you can't just. There's no answer to it.
So
there's more questions. Yeah. The answer to that question is more questions.
Right.
Before you can start to answer something.
Before we leave here, I had a customer who a new higher up came in. Excuse me, and everybody had to basically. His requirement was everybody had to read the Phoenix Project, and that was like basically you were like fired if you didn't read it. Not that it's the newest book on Agile or DevOps, but still that was like his requirement, which I always found funny.
Yeah.
But as we kind of leave this episode, once again, I want to remind everybody: essays and IPAs at CDI.com, LLC.com rather. Please send us feedback. Please give us some information on, once again, maybe it's funny questions that you guys have.
Recommend some beers.
Right. Recommend beers. Breweries. Hit us up. I actually, on maybe one of the next episodes, I have a brewery that's interested in bringing us in some drinks. So that'll be awesome. So it's our first kind of sponsored episode, let's call it. Oh. But definitely, write us. And Ed, thank you once again.
No, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it, and it's always good to get the digital message out there a little bit and continue the conversations around it. Because it just continues to grow and build, and really, really proud of this team. So,
thanks, man.
Thank you for being a co-host.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime.
So cheers.
Launch.
Essays and IPAs is a production of CDI Studios and is produced by Alyssa Hall and Spencer Grogan. To learn more about CDI, you can visit cdillc.com.